Okay, so here we go. Let's see. I'm on Team Warfare, and I'm here to talk about Ecumenism Knows No Borders. So it's a paper that was put out recently. I thought I'd read from it, and then I don't know, maybe go to a few other places with this. Not sure yet. See how it goes. And okay, so the paper is by a Hierodeacon Anonymous, and it's titled Ecumenism Knows No Borders, Examples of Modern Day Ecumenism in Relation to Events of the Past and the True Orthodox Response. And now I've skimmed over this a little bit. It seems pretty spot on. So, what's up, Black Sheep? Okay, so here we go. It says in the forward, in these days of ecumenism, it is important not to forget what the past has to teach us. As true Orthodox Christians, we have a responsibility not only to bear witness to the Orthodox faith, but also to be able to identify where it is that the faith is not being witnessed to. Instead, it is being mocked. Many so called Orthodox Christians today do not know the traps into which they have fallen, either by their own fault or by the fault of their arch pastors, who betrayed the faith. Somehow, the vast majority of, quote, Orthodox Christians, those who belong to the patriarchates, are still unable to comprehend that the fact the involvement in the ecumenical movement is itself a condemnable thing, and that if it is for this reason that they have been compromised. In 1983, the Royal Court issued an anathema condemning not only the ecumenists, but also those who knowingly have communion with them. The Royal Court today is recognized by all of the patriarchates, and therefore by default they recognize this anathema. However, they willingly participate in the heresy, confusing those who are questioning this participation and keeping those who find comfort in it away from the truth. There are no boundaries to ecumenism. In the beginning, it was said to be a way to unite all, quote, Christians who've been separated. Forgetting about the heresy contained within that idea alone, it has now become a way to unite all religions and to force each one of these groups to pray together and to portray the faith. There is no part of the world which this idea is not infected, and no church which it is not infected, in one way or another. Keeping this in mind, true Orthodox Christians have a calling from God to guard the church from error. And in order to do this, there must be an understanding of what we oppose and why. Below are some examples of this portrayal of faith, both in modern times and in the past, which seem to form a succession. These examples prove to us that the so-called, quote, world Orthodox churches are truly in heresy, and that the response of an Orthodox person should be to flee far from those who either promote it or tolerate it, which could be considered even more dangerous. Okay, so malevolence. Josephat the Malevolent. Okay, so we're going to start here. It says, the situation which the Eastern Orthodox world faced in the late Middle Ages was that of war, schism, brutality, and deception. This part of the world was and remains today a very sought after region, and for one for which many have shed their blood. In the late 16th century, the religious population of the area was at best scrambled. After the failed attempt of the Union by the quote Orthodox traders and the Roman Catholics in Florence, and the fall of the city of Constantinople, which brought about the rise of a new Muslim empire in the East, the simple people and clergy were in disarray. Political gains were mixed in with ecclesiastical politics, and those who seemed to care about keeping true religion threw it all away in an instant for a few coins. With the rising influence of Protestantism, the Orthodox population faced another threat to add on top of the Roman Catholics. This, however, was the least of their worries. In 1596, the year in which the Union of Brest took place, The Orthodox Metropoly of Kiev, which included a large portion of the faithful in Eastern Europe, signed an agreement with the delegation of the Pope of Rome, which allowed for these former Orthodox Christians to restrain their traditions and liturgical practices, but to commemorate the Pope of Rome as the head of the Church, and to be in full communion with him, accepting all his theology. Naturally, this was met with great resistance by the Orthodox clergy and faithful, who were now left without a metropolitan. It was during this state of affairs that one of these treacherous clergy who became united to the Church of Rome emerged and began his work of, quote, soul snatching. This was the so called Josephat, the Malevolent, the mean Mr. Mustache Man, in context synonymous with tyrant of the Eastern religious world. According to an article written some 30 years ago by Nicholas Mass, Josephat, quote, was more than an apostate. He was a master practitioner of the psychology of terror. In this article, it is impossible to overlook the eerie similarity to what we are seeing happening in today's world in 2024. Quote, Josephat's campaign of terror was designed and executed with one purpose in mind: to discourage and prevent Orthodox Christians from participating in their ancestral faith. Since the Orthodox masses could not willingly follow their bishops, a handful of priests, and the nobility into apostasy, Josephat and his fellow apostates consciously chose to achieve their ends by violent means. Rather, they did this by trying to create among the Orthodox faithful a feeling of utter despair and powerlessness, so that, like Marshal Pétain centuries later, Josephat could impose on them an artificial religion, a Vichy theocracy, over which he would be the administrator. Worshippers were forced out of their churches, many only leaving on the end of a bloody sword. When the Orthodox, in one instance, set up tents in which to worship, Josephat encouraged his brigades to disrupt their services, set fire to the tents, and attack the clergy and believers. And with the help of the Latin civil authorities, Josephat saw to it that the Orthodox priests were exiled and that no new Orthodox bishops were consecrated. His pogrom violently put down any resistance to the Brest, quote, union, and left the Orthodox ostensibly powerless to protest the loss of their faith to papal domination. Sorry. uh, so that's pretty crazy. Um, don't we see today Orthodox Christians in Ukraine being attacked, their churches burned and bombed, being closed and sealed, and the people themselves being killed? Don't we see these actions being sanctioned by the apparent, quote, Church of Ukraine, which has become a union body? The only difference today is that both sides of this a part of this conflict are corrupted ecclesiastically, leaving aside any worldly politics. The one side conforming to a new, quote, unia with the Church of Rome, and the other being compromised by the heresies of Sergianism and Ecumenism. Uh, Mass goes on to say, quote, the idea of the unia, a bridge between Orthodoxy and Rome, died with Josephat and his violent, vulgar witness. Unfortunately for us, he was wrong. Not that we dare call these heretics, those belonging to the MP in Ukraine, truly Orthodox, but they, calling themselves Orthodox, have decided to forget this history and again compromise the Orthodox faith. Unfortunately, the, quote, idea of unia did not die with the memory of this hideous man, no matter which way we turn. Okay, so in the bosom of Belial. So here they got a picture of Metropolitan Nicodem of the MP with Vladimir Cyril Gudyev, who's now the Metropolitan of the MP. So this is on June 30th, 1963. A glorious and publicized coronation took place, one with much celebration and pomp, that of the Pope Paul VI in Rome. He was honored, he was vested, and he was crowned, honoring the Western tradition of coronation, which had been passed down from the centuries. This event, however, was the last of its kind, as this new pope was no longer interested in holding on to such precious tradition And as we all know, whatever the Pope says goes. It wasn't only this tradition which was tossed out, but many other traditions. The traditional Latin Mass emphasized, which were disregarded along with it, something which caused much scandal in the Roman Catholic world by means of the Second Vatican Council. Once everything was said and done, Pope Paul drew near to the end of his life, and on August 6th, 1978, he reposed. This, of course, brought much sadness in the world for those who loved and admired him, including many seemingly Orthodox Christians who believe staunchly in promoting their perverted version of, quote, church unity. One such Christian was Metropolitan Nicodemus of, quote, Leningrad of the Moscow Patriarchate. He, along with other Pope worshipping Russian clergy, made their way to Rome to serve a memorial for the Pope and attend his funeral, and witnessed the election, no longer a coronation, of the next Pope, Pope John I. Apparently, due to the, quote, climate in Rome, the Metropolitan was not doing so well with his health. After the election of the new Pope, it was time for him to receive the delegation of clergy, which had to honor the late Pope and, of course, the new one. Around 9:30 a.m., the Pope welcomed Metropolitan Nicodemus, and they exchanged, quote, secret words concerning church unity. At that time, the Archimandrite, accompanying Metropolitan Nicodemus, began to notice that his face was going pale. After Metropolitan Nicodemus finished speaking in a low voice with the Pope, he went to sit down. He then made a large and profound prostration towards the feet of the Pope on the carpet. All were shocked by this, and the feeling grew when they saw that he didn't get up. The Pope became worried and attempted to help, but he slouched over, dead. The doctors were called immediately and pronounced him dead on sight. The Pope began reading the prayers for a departed along with the Russian clergy. He later told the press that Metropolitan Nicodemus died in his arms, and he had never heard such beautiful words spoken about church unity from anyone but him. Metropolitan Nicodemus is remembered in Russia as being, quote, one of the greatest historical personalities of modern ecumenism, and without fail, his successor in spirit makes every attempt they can to emulate him. We see a similar event which took place in 2016 in Havana, Cuba. Both Pope Francis and Patriarch Cyril of Moscow traveled to the capital city of Cuba in order to discuss religious and political events and to make a joint declaration. This declaration can be summarized quite well by point 24, which states that, quote, Orthodox and Catholics are united not only by the shared traditions of the Church of the first millennium, but also by the mission to preach the gospel of Christ in the world today. This mission entails mutual respect for members of Christian communities and excludes any form of uh, proselytism. Proselytism. Uh, okay, so it's pretty crazy. In more simple times, the Pope and Patriarch promised each other that they will not seek converts. The head of the Church of Russia promised that he will not allow the pushing of Orthodox dogma onto Catholics, since according to him, they are united already. What a successor of Metropolitan Nicodemus. What an honor to his legacy. Truly, Patriarch Cyril has surpassed him in efforts towards ecumenism. He, however, paid no attention to the demise of his spiritual predecessor, the Summit. Okay, so since the beginning, an organic member of the World Council of Churches, the notorious ecumenist organization, which, as St. Philaret of New York says, quote, recognizes itself as being in error and is concerned only about finding phrases which express that error in terms acceptable to all, and has already managed to merge heretical Christians into one body. The Greek Archdiocese of North America has not missed a single opportunity to participate in ecumenical dialogues. From having simple discussions to participating in pagan worship, there's no limit to the ecumenism which has been witnessed in the past 60 years. In 2021, the quote Archbishop of the New Calendars in America, El Peladoros, participated in a summit in Washington, D.C. about interreligious freedom. During the summit, he gave a speech in which he stated, quote, when you elevate one religion above all others, it is as if you decide there's only one path leading to the top of the mountain. But the truth is, you simply cannot see the myriads of paths that lead to the same destination because you are surrounded by boulders of prejudice and that obscure your view. According to this quote archbishop, we are unable to elevate one religion above others, and all faiths lead to the same path. We don't need converts, we don't need education, and in fact, we don't really need to be orthodox at all, since any religion could do the same job. No matter which way one looks at this statement, it's hard to misunderstand it, although some manage to do it. Robert Arakaki, author of the article, quote, "From whom does A.B. Uh, I guess that's Abbott Apelidor speak?" explains in it this way. Quote, at first I didn't catch the remark with my reds of past only because El Pelidorus gave the speech in what appears to have been a secular political context, the International Religious Freedom Summit. As an American, I am very sympathetic to a secular state and to religious pluralism. As a Christian, I believe that Jesus is the only way to the Father. As an Orthodox Christian, I believe that the Orthodox Church is the one true church. So, how does one speak as an Orthodox Christian to a diverse, non Orthodox setting like the summit? Answer with care and nuance. Unfortunately for Robert, there's actually no way to misconstrue the statement made by the quote archbishop into a political one. There's nothing political in the statement. It is entirely religious. Robert, speaking as an Orthodox Christian, says that, quote, I believe that Jesus is the only way to the Father, and as an Orthodox Christian, I believe that the Orthodox Church is the one true church. The problem here is that Elpidophoros believes that there are myriads of ways to the Father, and there is no true religion. Since you can't elevate one above the other, it seems that there is no limit to the length that people will go, aided by demons, to defend their uh, uh, heresiarchs. Heresiarchs? I don't know how to say that. Uh, it's a play on heretics and hierarchs, so I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of dumb. It says, and ignore the problems which they face since they simply are comfortable where they are. After all, they have their, quote, saints, which are one in mind with them, and which bind them hand and foot to their heresy, which brings comfort and ease. Uh, okay, so now we got, yeah, what's up, guys? All right. Um, let's see. All right, I'm gonna return to the text here. It says the best patriarch. It's got a picture here of Bishop Luke Crimea or Chimera or something like that. I don't know how to. I've always had trouble pronouncing certain things. And far left is sitting Patriarch Sergius. So that's pretty wild picture there. And it says a common thing heard by old counters of these days is the supposed quote checkmate of the argument quote well we have the saints. Unfortunately, some simply do not know how to respond to such a statement. They may ask themselves, quote, why do we celebrate the new saints? Why don't we celebrate the new saints? Quote, why don't we have saints? Shouldn't the true church be the one producing saints? The Church of Christ is filled with saints. They are present at every liturgy, even if the people are not. This confusion is a result of widespread delusion and promotion of new elders of our times, which not possess an orthodox mindset, but instead a mindset of, quote, well, what can you do? Well, they got, and with that, they guide many away from the truth and to remain comfortable with their falsehood. The idea of, quote, fighting from within is one which should have been forgotten long ago. It has been argued as being a necessary step within a climate of great confusion, and be that as it may, there is no longer a time of confusion. Things are crystal clear. Whoever reads the above information and sees wrong within it, that the person will guide himself on the right path, But whoever starts to make excuses, that person will never accept the truth. Within true orthodoxy, as both Archbishop Averki of Jordanville and Father Seraphim Rose, both figures beloved by those in communion with heretics, put it, there have been shown forth many saints. Saint Catherine of Attica, 1927. Saint Callinicos de Hesychus, 1930. Metropolitan Chrysostom uh, Kavordieris, 1955. Saint Nikolai Velimirovich, 1956. St. John the Romanian, 1960. St. John Maximovich, 1966. The Elder Hieronymus of Aegina, 1966. Saint Philomenos of Jacob's Well, 1979. Saint Justin Popovic, 1979, and Saint Philred, Metropolitan New York, 1985, are only some of the many new saints who repose within true orthodoxy, meaning that they had no connection to Ecumenist bishops because they stopped commemorating them and or aligned themselves with Orthodox bishops who held the true faith. This list does not include those righteous ones who repose amidst the confusion of the calendar issue in Greece and were themselves following the old. If all were included and written down, there would be no end. Some may say, quote, but your list stops in the 80s. Are there no more saints? We must understand what is meant to be a saint. We don't make saints. We do not declare them. We simply recognize them. If we do not say right now that we recognize them, does that mean that they are not a saint? Of course not. This idea is no longer present in the world of constant rush canonizations and celebrations, and other mockeries of mysteries of God. Saint Zena of St. Petersburg was recognized as a saint after many miracles and prayers. St. John Maximovich and St. Philaret of New York were recognized as saints after their relics were discovered incorrupt. They are true signs of sainthood, and there is no reason to rush in dealings of these events. Quote, God gave us in these difficult times the best patriarch. These were the words by the elder Paisios of Mount Athos, in reference to Patriarch Bartholomew, the arch heretic. In contrast to Saint Philaret of New York and his incorruptible relics, this statement is not of a sign of sainthood. It is a sign of delusion and corruption of faith, much like Elder Ephraim of Arizona and his questionable visions of the Mother of God. Statements like these keep people within heresy. They don't help the situation. Luke of Crimea, the surgeon, a former catacombed Christian and betrayer of the faith who aligned himself with the heresiarch, Sergius Stragorodisky, I guess, and Stalin, and being promoted by many, including in the Rocourt MP, a great healer and wonder worker. This is the perfect example of ignoring the obvious betrayal of faith and embrace of heresy and rushing towards, quote, the, quote, miracles and, quote, healings and other such things. Miracles can be worked by demons, too. We could go through each and every one of these newly canonized and widely publicized, quote, saints, but there's no need. Whoever is questioning these new saints and the statements or the actions they made, let us hope they come to the realization that maybe the simple fact that is they are not saints at all, but tools used by corrupt church leaders to pacify their flock for a little while longer. Whoever will see and acknowledge the true signs of sainthood, that person will stay away from delusions, while the others will fall into the pit of delusions, which lead nowhere good. In addition, there has been a lot of talk about the, quote, pan-Orthodox Council in order to make decisions for the future of the Church, regardless of the fact that our confessors of faith have already aided by the, quote, the already existing condemnations of both ecumenism and the, quote, new calendar. Let's examine the idea of a mass influx of world Orthodox Christians joining the old calendar movement, either due to some type of council or some large scandal, such as the one widely talked about today, a common Pascha. What would be the major issue here? Those who would join us for these reasons would not have any reason to say that Elder Paisios, Luke the Surgeon, or the other plethora of false saints are not saints. This alone would keep these poor faithful within heresy. This is the reason that the devil pushes for these canonizations. yet another hindrance in finding true orthodoxy. Yeah, that's a rough one for sure. And that's the game that the devil tends to play. Is like he wants you to have like some emotional attachment, to this so-called saint that's been marketed to you probably on YouTube or something, um, or like in myriads of books they didn't write, just pushed out by these jurisdictions that want you to stay in heresy. So they're going to promote these people as saints or whatever. And I have a feeling a lot of times too, like maybe those people were alive today and they seen what was going on. I don't think they would necessarily agree with it. And who knows, maybe they would break off or something. I don't know. But it's hard to say. But I know this is like it's definitely dangerous to use these figures as kind of like justification to stay under heresy, and it's pretty diluted. Uh, says the roles of women. Okay, so we got left side Archbishop Matthew with two deaconesses, a deaconess ordained by Saint Nectarius. Okay, so I imagine that's the appropriate way to do things. On May 9th, 2024, the Patriarchate of Alexandria shocked the Orthodox world when it ordained a deaconess. Now, it is well known that the role of deaconess has existed in the Church since very early times, and there are even saints who are ordained into this role. It is also known about Saint Nectarius of Aegina and his spiritual child, Archbishop Matthew of the strict faction of Old Calendars of blessed memory, had ordained nuns to this role. Now, of course, this made the nuns effectively subdeacons, that is, servers in the divine services with no liturgical roles, clearly shown in the photographs above, with their or, orarians crossed and subdeacons. This, however, is not the case with the angelic Molin, the women who were ordained, quote, deaconesses by Metropolitan Seraphim of Alexandria and Patriarchate in Zimbabwe. It goes on to say, and it says, as we can see from the photograph, the role of the angelic Molin is not able to be compared of the role of those nuns which were ordained by the aforementioned fathers. When a deacon is ordained, it occurs after the anaphora, after the point of the divine liturgy, in which the bread and wine are mystically changed into the body and blood of Christ. The first petition which the newly ordained deacon intones is the quote, commemorating all the saints. Again and again in peace, let us pray to the Lord. He is also guided by an already existing deacon on how to hold his orarian. I gotta figure out how to say this word, as I feel pretty stupid right now. So give me Oraron. Okay. Orarion. Oraron. Alright. I guess that's how you say it. Okay. Lost my place. The first petition which the newly ordained deacon intones is the quote, commemorating all the saints again and again in peace. Yeah, this is where I was. And his oraron, and complete the remaining petition. This is what we see in the above photograph. The new, quote, deaconesses is being guided by a deacon in her new, quote, liturgical role. Let there be no confusion on this matter. This is not what occurred in the ancient church, and this is not what was sanctioned by St. Nectarius or Archbishop Matthew. Yeah, I remember like a comment section at the time on like Facebook when that happened on the actual website of the people that ordained this deaconess. There was people in the comments that they like brought up Saint Nectarius and they were like, "See, he did it too." But so this is They must have seen that as well. So that's pretty crazy. This is an abomination, an insult to God, an insult to both the roles of women and men, and of course done only with one intention: the future ordination of women to the priesthood. Sure, there exists within world orthodoxy today those faithful ones who promote the idea of a female priesthood, demoting the idea of monasticism to be simply an embarrassment. The goal of the Masons accomplish. Oh, I see. These people may exist, but now that it has become a reality, since of course the deaconate is the first degree of priesthood, there's no stopping the boulder crashing down the mountain. Without the proper roles of men and women within the church, there will be absolutely no order. Men and women are the highest and most honorable creations of God, and we should in turn honor God, in the very least, by following His commandments and way according to how He made us. This is yet another example for those who say that we must fight from within. From within what? Can't we see that ecumenism has destroyed world orthodoxy? No longer just in faith, but now in outward expression. Shouldn't it be obvious where these things lead? Quote, "You will know them by their fruit." A quote used most frequently by many, but understood by few. The destruction of order, the hatred of tradition, the staunch defense of delusion and heresy without end. These are the rotten fruits which we see, which have been seen for the 100 years now, but only few have been able to understand what to do with these fruits. Only few have understood what Christ said, that the tree must be rotten too. The source of these things is rotten. Ecumenism made the tree go rotten and the fruits thereon. Luckily, this is not the tree which Christ planted. The foundations which are true and pure, giving fruit of stability and strong faith, of the example of our recent holy ones. The tree of ecumenism was a branch which was broken off and fell from the tree Christ planted, and withered away, just like that one cursed fig. As the one cursed figs. As long as people keep making a defense for this heresy, for their hierarchs, and for their unfounded decision to remain and commune with heretics, this is all we need to know, that truly their tree has withered. The devil wouldn't work so hard to keep them in delusion, to keep them so close yet so far away, if it wasn't for their destruction and his pleasure. I agree with pretty much everything I've read so far, in this paper. Sister churches. Stefanak meeting Ante Pavlik. Ante Pavlik. I don't know. I don't know who that is. In 1994, the Holy Orthodox Metropolitan of Boston published a booklet entitled, quote, Sister Churches. Within this booklet are contained many examples of ecumenism between the Eastern Orthodox, the Roman Catholics, and the Protestants. One major example of the undeniable hypocritical teachings of ecumenism is to be found in Chapter 9 of the booklet. Quote, World Orthodoxies, Sister Church to canonize Slayer of the Serbian Orthodox people. Here will we present the part of that section which contains a letter written by Provoslav Grigsogono, a Croatian politician, to Archbishop Stepanak of the Roman Catholic Church in Croatia. He says, quote, I am writing to you as a man to a man, as a Christian to a Christian. I've been meaning to do this for months, hoping that the dreadful news from Croatia would cease, so I could collect my thoughts and write to you in peace. Quote, for the last 10 months, Serbs have been killed and destroyed in Croatia in the most ruthless manner, and the value of their property has been destroyed, reaching the billions. The blushes of shame and anger over the faces of every honest Croat. Quote, the slaughter of the Serbs began from the very first day of the establishment of the independent state of Croatia. Gospic, Gudovac, Bosansac, Krajina, I don't know, etc., and has continued relentlessly to this very day. The horror is not only in the killings include everybody, old men, women, and children, with accompanying barbarian torture. These innocent Serbs have been impaled. Fire has been lit on their bare chests. They have been roasted alive, burned in their homes and churches while still living. covered with boiling water, and then their skin peeled off and salt poured into their wombs. Their eyes have been pushed out, their ears, noses, and tongues cut off. The priests had their beards and mustaches torn off from their skulls, and the sex organs severed and put in their mouths. Wow. They've been tied to trucks and then dragged along the ground. Nails have been pressed into their heads nailed to the floor. They have been thrown alive into the wells and over cliffs, and grenades thrown after them. Iron nails broken in their hands, children thrown into flames and boiling water into the lime kilns. Their legs torn from them, their heads smashed against the wall, their backs broken against rocks and tree stumps, and many other horrible tortures were perpetuated, such as normal people can hardly imagine. Quote, their rivers Sava, Drava, and Dunabi, and their tributaries have carried thousands and thousands of their corpses. Dead bodies have been found with the inscription, quote, direction Belgrade, traveling to King Peter. In a boat which found on the Sava River, there was a heap of children's heads with the heads of a woman, which could have been a head of one of the mothers of the children, with the inscription, quote, meat for the Ivanova market in Belgrade. Horrifying is the case. Uh, Horrifying is the case of Maliva Bozanak from Stanbanza, whose child was removed from her womb. There was also the case of the roasted heads in Bosnia. The vessels full of Serbian blood. The cases of Serbs being forced to drink the warm blood of their slaughtered kin. Countless women, girls, and children, mothers in front of their children, children in front of their mothers. Okay, this is getting crazy. So you can guess what that says. Um, or else sent off to Utashi camps to serve in Ustashi. Okay. Okay, so something has happened. They were violated on Orthodox altars, it says. This is pretty horrifying to read. In the Petrini country, a son was forced. Oh, wow. I don't. This is. The slaughter of the Serbs in the Glina Orthodox Church and the murder of their Serbs on the altar of the Kaladusa Church is without precedent in history. These are detailed in original accounts of these horrors. Even the German and Italians were astonished by these crimes. They photographed a huge number of cases of such slaughter. The Germans are saying that the Croatians did this during the 30-Year War, and this is why they have been saying in Germany since then, God save us from the plague, hunger, and the Croats. Quote, the Germans despise us because of this and behave in a more humane fashion with the Serbs. The Italians photographed a vessel in 3.5 kilograms of Serbian eyes, as well as a Croat who wore a necklace strung with Serbian eyes, and another one who came to uh, Dubrovnik with a belt on which severed Serbian tongues were hanging. Quote, the horrors of the camps in which thousands of Serbs were killed or left to die from exposure, hunger, and cold weather are too terrible to mention. The Germans have been talking about a camp in Lika where there were thousands of Serbs, but when the Germans got there, they found a camp empty, drenched in blood and bloody clothing. In the camp, it has been said that a Serbian bishop also lost his life. Thousands upon thousands of Serbs in camps of Jasenovac are still being tortured. Okay, as they're spending their fierce winter in wooden gypsy stacks, with no straw or coverings, with a ration or two potatoes per day. In the history of Europe, there has been no similar case. One have to go to Asia in a time of Tamburlaine, of Genghis Khan, or to Africa to the countries of their bloodthirsty rulers to come upon similar situations. These events have shamed the name of Croatia for centuries to come. Nothing can absolve us fully from this ever again. We will not be able to tell even the wretched men in the Balkans about our 1,000-year-old Croatian culture, because even the gypsies never perpetrated such cruelties. Why am I writing to you when you are not a political personage and cannot bear responsibility for all this? Here is why. In all these unprecedented barbarian crimes, which are more than godless, our Catholic Church participated in two ways. A large number of clergy, priests, and friars and organized Catholic youth took an active part in all this. It also happened that the Catholic priests became camp guards uh, and Eustachi and accomplices, and so approved of the torture and slaughter of Christians. A Catholic priest even personally slaughtered an Orthodox clergyman. They could have not done all this without the permission of their bishops, and if they did, then they would have to lose their jobs or to be taken to court. And since that did not happen, it means that their bishops granted them permission. Quote, secondly, the Catholic Church made use of all this to convert the surviving Serbs, and while the soil was still remaining from the innocent victims' blood, while groans shuddered from the chests of the surviving victims, the priests, the friars, nuns carried in one hand the Utashi daggers, and in the other their prayer books and rosaries. The whole of this firm is inundated with leaflets written by Bishop Aksamovic and printed in his printing shop in Dejakova, calling upon the Serbs to save their lives and property by converting to Catholicism. It was as if our church wanted to show that it could destroy souls just as the Utashi authorities destroyed bodies. It is an even greater blot on the Catholic Church, since at the same time in Orthodox churches, all the Orthodox monasteries have been confiscated, their properties plundered, as well as many historical treasures. Even the patriarchal church in, you know, Sorimsky, Karlovy has not been spared. All this violence against conscience and the spirit has brought even greater disgrace to the nation and name, to the Croatian nation and name. Okay, this is, and then we got a photo here of the Serbian patriarch at an Orthodox monastery, and just Novak with RC clergy. So I get the point he's trying to make here is like this massive slaughter that the Catholics were kind of complicit in, and then you got these ecumenists acting like that's no big issue or something. It's pretty rough. Yeah, I would say so. Everything I've heard from this Father Thomas seems to be on point. If you get a hold of him and you're in India, I'd highly recommend checking him out. As far as I know, he's a true Orthodox Christian, and all the sermons that I listened to from him were pretty spot on. I think it's kind of timely too, because we got like I think Jay Dyer out there telling people like, if you join true Orthodoxy, you wouldn't have a church. Well, or like we're small numbers. Well, if you're so small numbers, why are we all over the world? India, China, Russia, Greece, America, Georgia, so many places like so. All right, so we're gonna return to this paper. That was really hard to read, because not only because of the words, but just like the brutality of all that. Okay. To understand the meaning of this letter, we must understand who it was that it was written to. Archbishop Stepanak, the head of the Roman Catholic Church in Croatia, who worked along with the UTASA, a Croatian military organization which had the goal of ethnically cleaning the Serbian population within Croatia. Is, of course, they did not convert to Roman Catholicism. As was to be expected, the Archbishop did not respond to this letter, as it was with his authority and blessing that these things mentioned above took place. Archbishop Stepanak reposed later on, after having been locked away by communist authorities, and was thus seen a martyr by the Croatian people in the quote sister churches. The question is asked, quote, if and when the papal churches began chanting hymns to honor their new Saint Stepinac, will the hierarchs and clergy of, quote, world orthodoxy, Rome's, quote, sister church, hear and speak out? Or will they hear only the siren song of ecumenism? 4 years after the publication of this booklet, Pope John II confirmed this on visiting the nation's capital. He beatified Archbishop Stepinac, declaring him a, quote, blessed and martyr of the Roman Catholic Church. Over 20 years later, the Serbian Patriarch Irenage sent a letter to Pope Francis asking him not to go forward with his full canonization, as it would cause trouble for the Serbs. One may ask, for what reason would this cause trouble for the Serbs? Do the Serbs have any relation or obedience to the Roman Catholic Church? Rather, the decision would have to make it difficult to unite with them. If the Serbian Patriarch didn't believe in the authority of the Pope or the validity of the mysteries of the Roman Catholic Church, it wouldn't bother in the slightest. One must understand that in the Roman Catholic Church, unlike in Orthodox Church, there are categories of saints. According to Orthodox understanding, however, this is irrelevant. If Stepinac is considered by them a, quote, blessed or a martyr, he is for them a saint. So we have our answer to the above question already. No, the hierarchs and clergy of, quote, world orthodoxy, Rome's sister church, will not hear and speak out. They will hear the siren song of ecumenism, which is is no more proof needed than the despicable compliance and cooperation with the Serbian Orthodox Church, which, in relation to the final statement made, Grizogona, has brought even greater disgrace to the Serbian Orthodox nation and name. Yeah, that was wild, honestly. Like that little read right there. I didn't know any of that stuff. So the fact that they sent some letter to the Pope and like, please don't canonize this guy or whatever. Like it's gonna cause problems. Like, why would you care if you're not an ecumenist? No, they know, And I think I've talked to like a few Serbs before, and like they're like, well, we have Saint Justin Popovich, and it's like, okay, like yeah, you had him, but didn't he like wall off from you guys and uh, you know stop commemorating the patriarch because of the ecumenical activity and told everybody that you needed to break away from the World Council of Churches or they be betraying the faith? And look at this now. So I talked to one and he said, I'll break communion when we fully go into communion with Rome. So that's pretty crazy stuff. So the new type of creed says in 2025 there will be conveyed a new ecumenical gathering, this time in Egypt. It is stated on the website of the World Council of Churches that, quote, at the invitation of His Holiness Pope Tawadros II of the Coptic Orthodox Church, the conference will gather from 24 to 28 October 2025 at the Logos Papal Center of the Coptic Orthodox at Wadi El Nutran, just over 100 kilometers from the city of Alexandria. The hope of the Coptic Church is that by holding this conference in Egypt, a place where so many saints struggled in the desert, the members of this heretical council might, quote, learn more about the desert spirituality and the fathers and mothers that lived in these deserts. Let us take a look at some of the things which the saint of the deserts had to say. This is Saint Anthony the Great. He says, do not have a single thing to do with schismatics and absolutely nothing to do with heretics. As you know, myself, I avoided them due to their Christ-hating and heterodox heresy. This is St. John of Damascus. He said, with every way possible, let us guard ourselves not to receive the communion of heretics nor administer it to them. This way we will not become participants of their falsehood and condemnation. Another quote from St. John of Damascus. It says, listen to me, people of all nations, men, women, and all children. All you who bear the Christian name, if anyone preached you something contrary to what the Holy Catholic Church has received from the Holy Apostles and Fathers and Councils, and has kept down to the present day, do not heed him. Do not receive the serpent's counsel as Eve did. to whom it was death. If an angel or an emperor teaches you anything contrary to what you have received, shut your ears. And this is St. John Cassian. He says, and so you are quite secure with such an announcement and teaching as yours, that your preaching will never be either foolishness to the Gentiles or stumbling block to the Jews. You will never be crucified with Peter by Jews and Gentiles, nor stoned with James, nor beheaded with Paul, for there is nothing in your preaching to offend them. It should be clear that the World Council Church's position of, quote, visible unity in one faith and one Eucharistic fellowship among all the heretical bodies which are members of her does not agree with the Orthodox teaching handed down to us by these Desert Fathers. This Bishop Cyriel, the Coptic spokesman for this event of the Demonic Council, goes on to say, quote, Nicaea brought 318 bishops together, and they were able to come to a common understanding to crystallize the Christian faith in the Creed. This may help us today to look back at this significant event and see what we can do as Christians to be closer together and to have more collaboration together to understand each other better. Now it seems that these gatherings of, quote, Christians are being equated to the ecumenical councils. But is it true, as proven above by the writings of the Holy Desert Fathers? The hierarchs of world orthodoxy, along with their brother bishops, have indeed formed a new type of creed, or simply a new creed, one to replace that which the true Orthodox still believe in. For some, it may be easy to dismiss as a unification of separated brethren, but if we take heed to what these Holy Fathers say about the changing of doctrine and dogma, we understand that true faith and the unity of that faith is what makes us brethren in the first place. Without that, we are no longer one family and no longer brethren, just separated. Okay. I got a few more pages here. So we're on page 19 of 22. So it's almost over. So Ukrainian Union revised. Vladimir Zelensky enthroned at the Fanar. When understanding the current ecclesiastical situation in Ukraine, it is not necessary to examine each and every synod or all historical church events leading up till today. Much like the event which took place in Brest in 1596, the goal is one and easy to understand. The devil uses different means to achieve the same outcome. In the beginning of this document, a quote from Nicholas Mass wrote an article in 1996 about Josephat the Malevolent was presented. Quote, the idea of union as a bridge between Orthodoxy and Rome died with Josephat in his violent, vulgar witness. Now we revive the ultimate reality, which some like to blame on some mystical power of the universe by saying, quote, history repeats itself. History does no such thing. History is a concept. The devil, which has tied up man in the bonds of deception, tries and tries again, using the same tactics because they work. They prey on our passions and weaknesses. Now, of course, in our modern days, we have a new enemy in general, Ecumenism. This heresy has been adopted in world orthodoxy, something which was not the case in the 1500s. The Patriarch of Constantinople, after, quote, disrespecting the Church of Russia by granting autonomy to the recognizing the Church of Ukraine, is no longer in communion with the Church of Russia. This split the faithful Ukraine in half, some remaining in the Church of Russia in one way or another, or some siding with the autocephalous Church of Ukraine, which now follows the new calendar, is in communion with the Greek Church. In the photograph above, we can see the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, standing on the throne opposite Patriarch Bartholomew in the Patriarchal Cathedral in Constantinople. One can argue historically and politically whether this is right or wrong, but since we're dealing with ecclesiastical issues here, we can with certainty say that it is wrong, if not solely for the fact that this political conflict in which Bartholomew has taken sides has caused schism. The whole Orthodox world is up in arms. One says, how dare you support Russia, which has invaded a country and started war? The other says, quote, how dare you support Ukraine and its Jewish president, which is closing churches and murdering innocent people? For true Orthodox Christians, however, these ideas and games of name-calling are of no interest. In Orthodoxy, we don't have gods, we have one God. We don't worship heroes, politics of war, as this conflict begs us to do. We are not permitted to support Ukraine, whose church has lost its faith, entering into the heresy of ecumenism, changing the calendar, and concelebrating with uniates, which, as Bishop Auxentius of Etna points out, are, quote, finding unhealthy orthodox with whom to concelebrate. We're also not permitted to support Russia, whose church remains steadfast in the heresy of ecumenism and celebrates its evil and surging its past as an accomplishment. Of course, these church matters are mixed in with politics too. One can't say, quote, we can support them politically, not ecclesiastically. This is simply not how the situation is set up. We can hope and pray for the best to this problem, but both sides, and both politically and ecclesiastically, but we cannot pick sides. Both are incompatible with the true Orthodox faith. That happens a lot too. Like there's a lot of situations where there's like these false dialectics where it's like you got to pick a side. It's either black or white, and it's like, you know, it's true Orthodox. We don't have to, both sides are wrong for individual reasons. So it says, this brings us to the same issue with the Greek new calendars and their false saints. All those who are traditionally minded will tend to show what the Moscow Patriarchate puts on for them and become convinced that this is where traditional orthodoxy is. They will join the beast of Stalin, the body which slaughtered millions of true Orthodox Christians, and pretend it never happened, while at the same time celebrating its perpetrators as, quote, confessors of the Orthodox faith. Something recently uttered out of the mouth of Patriarch Kirill in reference to the arch-heretic Sergius during his memorial Sergius. Us old calendarists will be forgotten. The example of the righteous ones who fought for the faith in the Russian Synod and in Greece won't appeal to the masses. The facade of traditionalism mixed with a little comfort will. Our job as Orthodox Christians is to not let any of this hinder us. We don't need to ask questions anymore, much as, quote, will they do this or that? Quote, what will happen if? Quote, we now know that anything is possible, having seen the destruction brought to the faith by these false shepherds. Us true Orthodox Christians do have problems, but we do not have those problems. And those problems are the ones which affect the salvation of men. Our job, uh, our job is to do something which is a problem for many old calendars, to educate ourselves on these matters and not fall into misinformation or slander, but be true examples and find the facts. Working on ourselves is the only way to help others and the world in general. As Saint Seraphim of Sarov says, quote, if you acquire peace within yourself, thousands around you will be saved. Okay, so that was the end of the article. I hope everybody's doing okay. And that was it. What's up with this? What's up with that face, man? What did I do? All right, donut. So, well, that was it. Appreciate everybody coming by on Unseen Warfare. And Ecumenism Knows No Borders. That was the paper we read from. And I hope you guys have a good day. Later.